Um, alongside me here is Kira Stevens. Hello, Kira.
Hello, everyone. Welcome all. Great to have you here, and thanks for coming. Good to see some familiar faces, and welcome to those who are new here to the Adelaide user group. Really looking forward to the session we have today.
Thank you, Kira. So before we start, I'd just like to mention we have one merchandise pack we'd like to give away for the Tableau merchandise. So stick around to the end of this and we'll announce a lucky winner. And also any feedback or questions you've got, please put it into the chat box on the screen there. Like I said, my name is Benson. My contact details are there if you want to contact me later. So I'd like to present our first presenter today, which is Ervin Vinzon. He is a Tableau developer and will be showing us how to use the map layers and shapes. And our second presenter will be Heidi Kalbe, who is a Tableau ambassador and will be showing us 20 Tableau hacks in 20 minutes. So without further ado, Ervin, over to you.
Great.
Hi guys, good afternoon. So let me share my screen. Okay. You're seeing my screen now?
Yep.
Okay, good. Let's start. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ervin Benson. I'm a Tableau Public Featured Author for this year, 2022. I'm also a 4-time VC nominee this year. So I would like to also share a little more about myself. So I work as a freelance Tableau developer, and I'm passionate on developing skills through practice. That's why I actively join in many Tableau community challenges or projects. And I even challenge myself to work on 100 prepping data challenges and Workout Wednesday for 100 consecutive days, just like a Saitama workout, an anime. So outside Tableau, I am very fond of watching anime, especially One Piece. As a proof, I even made my Iron Fist entry this year as a One Piece. So then let's go to our agenda for today. So far, our agenda for today is to use map layers feature to plot shapes. So there are 2 ways on how to use this technique. There is a manual position technique and a fixed position technique. So as an example for a manual position technique, let me just put this one up. So this is a visualization that is using a manual position technique on map layers. Actually, this is my first quiz of the day, wherein I manually position the attributes of each mountain in this visualization. As you can see, the tooltips can be shown in each attribute of each mountain. This is the advantage of the manual position technique. Then, for an example of the fixed position technique, this is another visualization I made for the Iron Quest, wherein I prefix the position of each award in each movie. So, are you guys ready? Do you want to know how to do this? Okay. So, moving on. So, we'll start with prepping the data. So, I made a sample data set here. And we need to set the X and Y coordinates of each row for the data. The way that you can understand easily the X and Y coordinates is just like a scatter plot, wherein X is 0, Y is vertical, or Y is 1, 2, 3. So I made it the data to show horizontal horizontally side by side. Then after that, after we data prep, we now go to Figma to create shapes. Now on Figma, I prepared some shapes. So as an example, for the manual position technique, it's very easy because you just, Figma, just create a shape here on the upper side. Then just like this one, then on the right side, there's an export here wherein you can export the shape and import it on Tableau repository folder, shapes folder. So for the manual position technique, um, this is used, this is exported, uh, this is exporting shapes one by one. So meaning to say that it doesn't mean that this is the position will be this is the our predefined position for the manual position, right? So meaning to say that we just need to export these shapes one by one and import it on Tableau. And after that, for the fixed position technique, this one is tricky because you need to export the shape with the frame so that it won't mess the orientation or the position of the shapes you preset on Figma or any tool that you made. I've used Figma because it's easy and it's free. So how do we export, or how do we correctly export the shapes here in using the fixed position technique? So for fixed position technique, we just need to select the frame. So how are we going to create a frame? So first, we need to, at the menu bar, we select a frame, just like this one. Then create a shape, what we like. Then remove the fill of the frame. First select the frame, then remove the fill. Then voila, we now export this as a frame. So when exporting or importing it on Tableau, it will not mess the position. Okay, so after that, going back to what I'm telling earlier, that we need to go to Tableau repository, shapes folder, where we can find that on our documents. And let me just share you. Okay, so here it is. You can see that there's a shapes folder in the Tableau repository. From there, we can create or create a new folder, then paste the shapes that we exported on Figma. So after that, we are now plotting the shapes. So since we have two techniques, so first we would start the manual position technique. For the manual position technique, that is making a calculated field of which is the make point calculation for the X and Y. Then creating it again for the second layer. Actually, it's much better if I will show you. So first, we have a calculation here, which is the make point calculation. We have to add it onto the detail card in the marks card, then change it to shape. So you can see it's now a map, but we need to add the ID. And now since we have prepped the data before, we now have 3 circles showing here. Then we need, because we're building a moon and a shape here, that's we are going to build here. So we just change the shape here and then reload the shape so that we can be sure about on the shapes we are using. Then since this is a manual position technique, we just change the shape here and then apply OK. Now we have the shapes in here. Next, for the second layer. So first we have we add a calculation or an int number, it doesn't matter if it's an int or a float number, to the make point calculation, so that we now layer or add the second layer. So be sure that you will see the add marks layer when using this one, so it will show correctly. As you can see, that is not the right number, because the circles or the shapes are now are not near enough with the moon. So we have to adjust this one. You can see I added a 0.05 within the X and Y field, and then voila, it's now, we just change it to shape, then add the ID, then add the name for each shape. Since there are different names for each one, it will change shapes. Then then we just assign each shape to each one, then change the size, and then add the size here. Okay, so now we have our layered a visualization using map layers with using manual position technique. As you can see, we need to remove the background so that it will dissolve within the background, because I'm using black and this is white. So how do we do that? Map background layers and remove all the check here so that it won't show there, and then format shape, remove the worksheet. Okay, so now here it is. So what are the pros and cons of this manual position technique? The pros and cons of this is that we can have the tooltip for each layer or for each shape that we are layering. Just like my visualization here, where I did set up each tooltip for each layer or each shape. Then for as a cons, we have to manually position each shape. So that is a that's really hard and very pesky if you have a multiple or if you have a lot of shapes that you will layer. So for next technique, this is the fixed position technique. Since we pre-designed our shapes here on Figma, we exported each frame, we can easily plot it on Tableau. So how are we gonna do that? We just use this base calculation and use it all over again. Let me just show you. So use this base or make point calculation, add this on detail, then change it to shape, then add an ID, then change the shape, then add the size or just the size, and using those, the first make point calculation that we made, we just add it onto the marks layer, and then we now have the shape beside the moon that we have predetermined a while ago. So we just change this to shape, then add the name onto the shape, and then since this is already using the fixed position, the shapes that we made, just select OK there and adjust the size. Okay, so now we have basically made the previous visualization using the fixed position technique without messing around the make point calculation. So again, we just need to remove the background layers because we're using map layers to do this, and this is actually a map. And okay, so voila, it's now done. We now have the visualization using the fixed position technique. So what are the pros and cons of this? For the pros, we can preset the position of shapes. We do not have the hassle of positioning shapes on Tableau. And the cons is the tooltips. So meaning to say, the last layer that we place on the shapes will be the tooltip that will be shown. So for summary and for key takeaways, there are different ways on how we can take advantage of these map layers, feature, and shapes. There are pros and cons of each technique that may help depending on your use case. So for inspiration, I would recommend you reading the blogs by CJ Mays, a Tableau visionary as well, and Miss Priya Padam. And if you already know this one, and you wanted to level up and know more beside using shapes, you can read the blogs by Tableau visionary Jeffrey Schaefer and Luke Stanke using this same technique but building charts. So here's an example of that. I build a 3 donut charts using the map layers. So that will be for our next session for in the future. So for now, thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you, Ervin. That was fantastic. I hope everyone's learned a lot there. Any questions, please, in the chat, if you would kindly ask away. And again, this is being recorded, so we will let you know the link later on. But Ervin, I appreciate that. Thank you ever so much for your presentation. I'd now like to pass it on to Heidi Kalbe, who is a Tableau ambassador and will be showing us the 20 Tableau hacks in 20 minutes. Heidi, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Rob. If I may ask you just one favor, let me know like 3 minutes before my time is over, because otherwise I'll just go on and on and on. So yeah.
We will. Thank you,
I
Heidi.
would appreciate a header, sure. So hi everyone, my name is Heidi Kalbe. I'm a senior consultant at Woodmark Consulting here in Germany. So hello from the other side of the world. And I'm bringing to you a number of my best of tips from TC 21 and 22. So I've done a bit of speed tipping in the past. Just a few words about me. You can find me on Twitter at the Heidi K. I blog at queenofdata.net. So if I may just ask you one favor, please don't try to click along. Please don't try to take any notes. Almost all of the tips I'm showing you today are detailed on my blog with screenshots and GIFs and lengthy explanations. I go on and on. So just sit back, enjoy, try to remember as much as you can, and the rest just read up. I'm very passionate about alpacas, about my ukulele, about visual analytics, and I'm also passionate about Data Plus Swim in Germany. So if you want to join, and you can, please just use the QR code and see us at our next meeting. Though I just checked, and our meetings are usually at like 1:30 a.m. your time. So maybe not, but if you're interested, please do. All right, and without further ado, let's just get right into the thicker things. I'll start with one of my favorites, which is right-click drag. So you know that usually when you bring things into the view, you may want to change something like aggregation. For example, we're currently looking at the sum of time to ship, which doesn't make any sense because it doesn't take us 28,000 days to ship something in standard shipping, right? So what you usually do is you go back into the field, change the measure to, for example, the average. But maybe I also want to bring in the median and the minimum and the maximum just to have all my measures in here. And sure, I can go in, bring it in again the usual way, and then do this 3-click step to changing the measure or the aggregation. but I can also just use the right mouse key button thingy. So if I just right click drag it into the view, Tableau will ask me what kind of aggregation do you want, and this actually makes it pretty quick to bring in all the measures I'm interested in. The fun thing is this also works with dimensions. So let's say I'm interested in the distinct count of order ID, if I find it. Yeah. So right click, drag it into the view, and Tableau will ask me, oh, you obviously want to aggregate. How about, for example, the count distinct? So I can easily do that. And my personal favorite is doing this with date fields. So let's say I'm interested in the discrete quarter of my order date. I would usually, do I even have it? Oh, I have my ship date. Well, let's use the ship date. I would usually bring it in and then go into the drop down and change it to quarter and hope that I have the right one. But I can also, again, just right click, drag it into the view, and Tableau will ask me, okay, what kind of view are you interested in? This is actually a small one because, yeah, let's say I'm interested in the quarter. But if I don't have anything on rows yet, Tableau would also ask me for the whole kind of selection that you can have with date fields. So very much a favorite of mine. And yeah, so right click, drag, big fan. What you can also do is you can set the default properties. For example, if I bring in time to ship, you could see that Tableau will always try to go to the sum, and that's not what I'm interested in. So by default, I want to always have, let's say, the average of time to ship. So I can just right click and go to default properties and change the standard aggregation to, let's say, the average. So if I now bring in a field, Tableau will automatically give me the average, which is nice. I can also do that with number format. So currently, Tableau is giving me 3 decimal places, which honestly is too much. I don't need that. So I can, again, right click, go to default properties and change the number format. And let's say I want to make this a custom number with just 1 decimal place and maybe a D for days at the end. Press OK, and now it's formatted everywhere, not just in this view, but across the whole workbook. So this makes formatting across multiple sheets really, really easy. And yeah, and we can also do that for sorting. So for example, my ship mode currently is premium, same day, and then standard shipping, because Tableau will by default sort alphabetically. But same day delivery is actually like the premium way of shipping that I have. So I can go to ship mode, again, right click, default properties, and I can change the sorting in here to make sure that I want a manual sort, and same day shipping should always be at the top. And you can see it changes in the background, and this would also have changed in any other sheets while I'm using the ship mode. I'm a big fan of calculations. You may or may not be, and I want to show you how to bring in comments until like your ears flow over. So one thing that I very much love and do far too rarely is you can actually comment the field. So again, talking about default properties, if I just hover over the field, I can add in a comment there. And this will not just show on the data pane, but also in the view. So if I hover over that field, it will display a description of what this field actually does, which can be helpful if you prepare data sources for others, or if you prepare so many data sources that you will have forgotten what you did 2 months ago and need to work on that again. So we can do that again, right click default properties and go to comment, and you can form it in here any way you like. So if you really want to impress that it's a ridiculously complex calculation, you can absolutely do that. What you can also do is when we go into this field, and it should be on the correct screen. One tiny tip on the side, if you press the control button and then just scroll with your mouse wheel thingy, you can actually make that bigger, which is nice for screen sharing sessions such as this one. But you can also comment in there. So I can make inline comments by simply adding 2 slashes and then commenting something in here, or you can also make this on an extra line, now Eastern Central. And if you want to block out whole blocks of your calculation, because you are kind of revising them and you may want to bring them in later, but you don't want to use them at this time. You can also create block comments by adding in a /**, and then at the end, *// and you can see now this whole block of text here is grayed out and will not be used in the calculation. And hidden information, very nice. So I would recommend that you always have this little triangle on the right-hand side open, because this shows you all the kind of calculations that you have, which is nice. If you forgot what upper is for, then you always find the list of parameters, a description, and an example. But what is also nice is you can click on fields that you are using, and Tableau will give you information. So if it just tells you the data type, this will usually be a field that is native to your data source. But if you click on other calculations, you can that you did, you can see what's actually going on in that calculation. So personally, I find that very convenient. Axes. I mean, we do work a lot with visualization, so you don't get around using axes in your vizzes, and there are actually 4 drop zones that I want to talk about. So if you want to bring in a second measure, there's 4 points where you can drop it. One of them is at the side of the axis. So you can see if I'm at the very left or at the very right hand side of my axis, I get this little dashed line and these 2 axes next to each other, which means that this will create 2 axes next to each other. And depending on which side I drop it, that's where Tableau will position the measure. So for example, if I bring in quantity and I move it to this middle, then it will drop quantity between sales and profit. Other drop zones, so that was drop zone number 1. Drop zone number 2 is I can drop it on this little square that you have on the left upper left hand corner. If I drop it there, that will replace the axis that I had before. Now, if I drop it directly onto the axis, so just smash in the middle of it, this will create a combined axis. So this will get us measure names and measure values. So you can see both profit and sales are now on this same axis. And the 4th is on the opposite side of it. So if I drop something not on this axis, but on the other side, so in this case, at the top, you can again see the dashed line, see the axis symbol, and this will create a dual axis. So these are the 4 drop zones. Try to remember them. Using specific colors, yes. I mean, you probably know that you can edit your colors, many different ways of doing that. And then you will have a bunch of palettes in here available. You can even add custom palettes, but what if you don't have the time to add in a custom palette, but you definitely want, let's say, the zoom blue for any reason, and you don't know the code, then you can just double click on these colors, and this will give you a whole host of options. So either you know exactly where you want to go out of these 16 million colors that you have here, or you know your RGB or your HTML code, or you can simply pick the screen color, and I said I want to have the zoom blue. So now I can make things zoom blue if I want to. I don't really, because it clashes with the rest of the color palette, but I could if I wanted to. And maybe you are using different measures in here and you want to color them each individually. But the thing is, because I'm using measure names and measure values, if I simply bring in sales, for example, this will color all of them by sales, which is not what I want. Instead, I want to color by the individual measure names that I have in here. And I can do that by simply dragging by the different measure values. So I simply drag measure values to color. Now, in the first step, this will look really ridiculous because Tableau tries to give us a single color legend for all of the measures, which doesn't make sense. But what we can do is we go into the context menu of measure values and we use separate legends. And this will give us an individual color legend for each measure that I'm using in here. So we have one for sales, one for profit ratio, and one for the weighted discount. And that can make it really convenient. Tableau will usually if you have a horizontal axis, label at the bottom because that's where the axis is, right? But maybe you want to bring in something at the top. And we can do that by 5 different ways. For example, just double clicking in the columns and typing in here sales will give you the word sales at the top. And you would probably right click and hide the field labels for columns so that you just have sales in here. But the thing is, if you have a huge data source, this will add a piece of text into every single row. So maybe not the most performant bit that you can do. What you can also do instead is you just use any kind of text editor or any kind of Excel and type in whatever you want in here twice. Twice is important. Just copy that, go back to Tableau and paste, and this will create a helper data source. You can see that this was just copied from my clipboard, so that doesn't exist anywhere. It's just in this single workbook, and I can bring that in as a kind of as a blend. Where was I? 5 ways. Okay, I can bring that in as a blend. So just go to the other data source and bring in sales. Tableau will warn you that you don't have a relationship with sales, and that's fine because we don't need one. And this will bring in sales at the top. You can see this little orange tick mark saying that this is a data blend. What you can also do is if you have just the one single measure, then you can bring in measure names. So that will work like a charm. It doesn't work quite that way if you have multiple, at least not if you want to have if you don't want to have a combined axis. But for one single measure, that's absolutely fine. And what I would usually recommend. You could also do a dual axis. So simply control drag this next to itself, right click, make this a dual axis. Please remember to synchronize because Tableau will sometimes do weird things with your data. Make them all bars. And the thing is, now I don't want the bottom axis. So I could try right click, not show the header, but because it's the primary axis, if I remove the header, it will also remove the header of my secondary axis. So not the way to go. I could try to make it smaller, but again, it makes them equally sized, so not helping. I could try, and I have tried this, making it white. But the thing is, because it's all, oh yeah, let's make it white. Because these are essentially the same field, Tableau will make them both white. So again, not the way to go. But what you can do, and sorry for taking this long to explain, is you can remove the title from the primary axis. So we just have the numbers. You can go to the top axis and remove the tick marks. So just have no tick marks. So you just have the title. And you can make it a bit slimmer now. So you have the title at the top and the tick marks at the bottom. And of course, you could create a parameter and just move that to columns, but I'm not even going to show you that because I would usually advise against that. If you have stacked bars and you want to label them, you can try doing that. So for example, I can just press the T and every single segment of my bars will be labeled. But what if I want to label the total as well? So what I used to do is create a dual axis, remove the detail, label that, move to the background, etc. But you can already tell it's like 5 steps too many. So what you can do instead is just right click on the axis and add a reference line, or go to analytics and bring in a reference line. We want to have this per cell. And then we simply want to have the sum of sales in here. And other aggregation is apparently fine. And we want to label using the value. We don't really need a tooltip. We don't also want to show a line. Not interested in the line here. And we don't want to recalculate if we select single segments. And you can see, I mean, this works for most of the bars, but not for the topmost ones. So we need to right click and format and simply make sure that you have the alignment on the right-hand side, maybe have it in the middle. And then you can also make these numbers a bit, let's say, bigger and bolder and black, so that you can tell, okay, this is definitely the total. And if you think that these are too close to the actual bar, you can also change the number format, make that custom, and just add a couple spaces as a prefix, so that you get a bit of distance to the actual bar. So let's say you have a grand total in here. So you go to analytics, bring in the column grand total, but you want to have this stacked because you already have the different colors. So why doesn't this grand total get the different colors? Well, it does if you duplicate the field, which is weird, but let's do that. So right click, duplicate the field, and then simply bring this copy into rows, and Tableau will recognize that these are different fields now, so you will have a stacked bar. If you're using date axes, especially using months, there's different ways you can format that. So simply right click, format, and let's take a look at the custom format. So let's say we're interested in the year, and then we want to have our month in here. And you can see it all changing at the bottom of the screen. So take a look at that. If you put in just one M, that means you have a single digit numerical month. 2 M's and you will have a leading 0, 3 M's, and this will give you the 3-letter abbreviation. 4 M's will give you the whole word of the month, and a 5th M will make it a single letter abbreviation, which I would recommend against if you only have data for January, June, and July, but can be beautiful to use. So just remember the 5 M's. We will skip this one because I have a nicer example of that. If you have text tables and you essentially just want a list of things, I would usually recommend against that. Like, honestly, please think of any other chart type that you can think of. But if you definitely want that, you can either move your rightmost field that you have in rows to text. So simply Control drag to text and get rid of the header, and then bring out the screen so that you can actually see what you're doing. One option. Or if you definitely don't want to have that for any reason whatsoever, you could also, you could also simply change this to a polygon, because this way you will not even have a mark here, and then simply make this as small as you can, and this will give you a nice list of things. But again, I would recommend use any other chart type other than lists if you can. A couple of dashboarding tips. So personally, I think there are far too few shortcuts in Tableau, but you can find some alternative shortcuts. For example, I want to change the tooltip for any window. So what I would usually do, I would click on it, go to worksheet and change the tooltip, but I can also do that using a shortcut. So if I press my Alt key, and it's a slight difference, but you can see at the top that some letters now have the underscore underneath. And this is what helps you coordinate the shortcut. So if I want to go to worksheet, I press Alt and go to W, because you can see the W is underlined. So W will open up that menu, and I want to go to tooltip, and you can see that tooltip here is underlined. So if I press the O, that will open up the tooltip. So I can remember Alt W O will open up the tooltip. Careful if you use Tableau in any other language. So I usually have it in German because other interface languages will have different shortcuts. So that may be a bit interesting to navigate. Now, let's say I want to bring in an instructive overlay. I could do the long way around and design something beautiful in PowerPoint or Figma or something else, but I wanted to do the short thing. So what I did is I essentially just brought in a text field, make it floating, and you can switch between tiled and floating by simply pressing the Shift key. Bring in an important hint for how to use this dashboard. Format in any way you like. And what I would also recommend is to edit this. Oh, no, sorry, didn't want to edit, to go to layout and actually give this a background, which can be helpful. And then you can simply add a show hide button that makes it easy to hide and show this. And if you want to make really sure that it's actually found, you will give it a nice info button that you can click and then show the hint that helps people understand how to use the dashboard. Now, since a couple versions ago, we can actually start copy and pasting items in Tableau, dashboard items in dashboards. So for example, I have this nice button that will lead me to the view in detail, and I want to have this for the other, for the others as well, but I don't want to bring in the button again and form it all the way through. So I can simply Control copy and Control paste and bring in this button multiple times and then add it to account for the other views. Now, let's say I want to switch out this sheet at the bottom. I want to bring in another sheet for reasons. I could either remove this and then bring in a new sheet if I wanted to, but you can see positioning isn't always that easy, and then sometimes things get moved around and I don't want it. So what I can do instead, I can simply click on it, go to the sheet that I'm actually interested in, and you can see that there's this arrow with the two arrow ends, and you can simply click that and that will switch out the sheets. So I can switch out with any sheets that I'm interested in here, but actually this line chart kind of fits quite nicely. Yeah, still have some time. I'm looking at ranks here. I forgot what kind of data source I have here. Oh, Eurovision data. So Eurovision Song Contest, we're looking at how well the different countries score in the year 2011. And I have colored that by region. So if I want to filter on a region, let's say I'm interested in Scandinavia, I can do that. But the thing is, this will mess up my ranking. So just as comparison, you could see before that Sweden was in 3rd place. But if I filter on Scandinavia, Sweden will move to 1st place, which is not quite true. It just scored the best out of the Scandinavian countries. So if I want to keep my ranking, I need to do a little trick, and that is due to the order of operations. So dimension filters will take out the actual rows of data, but because the rank is a table calculation, that comes after. So what can I do if I first want to have my table calculation correctly and then filter out? I need to use a table calculation filter. And we can do that by simply creating a calculated field, which is my filter region. And in here, I'm only looking at the region by using lookup. Let me type this in before I explain it to you. So lookup, and let's actually take a look at the official Tableau explanation. Lookup returns the value of the given expression, which is minimum of region, in a target row offset as a relative from the current row. So we are looking at the minimum of region. We need to use minimum because it's a table calculation. Everything has to be aggregated in a table calculation, and we want to offset by 0. So essentially, we're just looking at the region of the row we're currently in. Let's press OK, and let's move this to the filter. And let's actually show this filter. Let's get rid of the other one. Don't need this one anymore. And if I now filter on Scandinavia, you can see that it does retain the rank. So that's kind of nice if you want to retain the rank or percentage or anything, any other kind of table calculations that you may be doing in the view. For line charts, there's the eternal discussion in the database community of are we allowed to truncate the axis or not? And people are a bit unsure. So why don't we just give people the option of changing deciding whether they want to truncate or not? And we can do that using a parameter. So let's bring in a parameter. Let's call this zoom axis ? So that people know they can decide things. And let's make this a Boolean. True should be yes, zoom in, and no should be no, show in full. Press OK. Let's actually show the parameter and show the different options that we have here. Now, the parameter by itself doesn't do anything. We do need a calculated field. So let's add this in. Let's call this 0 line. And if my zoom axis parameter, which we can see because it's in purple, is true, then I don't want anything. And if it's false, then I want to have 0 in here. And you will see why in a second, because now we will bring this to detail and add in a reference line using the 0 line. Now I have made this big and bold and orange so that we can actually see what's going on. And you can see that nothing is going on. We don't currently have a line in here because we are using true. But if I say, no, I want to show in full, then you can see that this line at the bottom shows up. So all we have to do now is go to the axis, edit this one, and let's select to not include 0. Now, the thing is, usually this would truncate, but it doesn't at this time because we still have the 0 line at the bottom. But if we don't have that anymore, if we move to yes, zoom in, Tableau will truncate the axis, and we can go to no, show in full, and it will bring in the 0 line again. So all we have to do is edit this. Let's try to not show a label, not have a tooltip, and also not have a line visible. And this will allow users to zoom in or show the axis in full, however they want. Okay, one good thing about formatting, because I love this one, I'm looking at differences in here, and I want to make it very, very obvious that we have actual differences in here. So what we can do is we can right click and format this. And what I like to do is let's go to numbers and actually go to custom. And we can see minus definitely shows a negative difference, but I also want to show that we have a positive difference for the positive numbers, and we can bring in a plus at the front here. So that's one option of doing it. If I want to make it really, really obvious, we can also add in symbols in here. For example, an upward triangle or a downward triangle. And to do that, we go to whatever search engine is your favorite, and look for UTF-8 symbols, especially UTF-8 triangles in this case. Use any library that kind of jumps out to you, and we can copy these symbols and go back to Tableau and bring this in here. So I want to have an upward triangle, and you can see that gets moved to the front, and also a downward triangle to have for the negative values. And this will make it pretty obvious what's going on here. But the thing is, this will also give me an upward triangle plus for plus minus 0, and that's not what I want. So what I can do is look for the plus minus sign and just copy this from essentially anywhere. Because in Tableau, anything before the first semicolon is positive numbers, then you have negative numbers, and you can add in a second semicolon and add in how your 0 values should be edited or formatted. So that's kind of nifty. And what you could also do if you don't want numbers at all, you can simply remove all of this and say better and worse for negative numbers, or same for 0 values. So this way you can use text to express your numbers without creating an extra calculated field. So kind of nifty, if you ask me. Do I still have some time left, Rob? Because I can go on.
Yeah, I think you've got about another 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, maybe another
okay.
5 minutes, I reckon, and then we'll
Okay.
do our giveaway after
Wrap
that.
up. Yeah, sure. Okay, cool.
Thanks, Heidi.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Thanks. So yeah, it's just enough fun for 5 minutes. Okay. So I like, what did I even do here? Oh yeah, sorry. Okay. Sorry, just had to think for a bit. So if you bring in sheets to Tableau, what Tableau will usually do is it will bring in all of the different cards that you had visible in the sheet. So filters, parameters, color legends, size legends, etc. And it will always kind of mess up your layout because it will just position them like where Tableau wants to position them. And if I bring in something else, again, Tableau will bring in things here, and I don't want that. So what you can do to counterpoint that is you simply take this container and you make it floating, and then you can simply move that to outside the sheet, outside the dashboard, by simply moving it over here. Make sure that you don't try to drag it, because if you drag it, Tableau will simply remove it from the whole thing. We don't want that. So either go to layout and change the position to outside the dashboard, which we can also do. So if we move this to 1300, then that will be outside. Or you can simply move one corner out and then move the other corner out. And now Tableau will continue adding things to this container. So if I bring in my other sheets, you can see that anything else will be moved to that container outside of the dashboard, and then you can bring them in at your own pace whenever you want to, and simply position them exactly where you want them positioned. So kind of can be helpful. I'm actually going to skip this one. You can read up on that because I'm not confident I'm going to manage. No, I don't have enough. Okay, now I'll try. So if you want to toggle between light and dark mode, you can kind of do that by simply bringing in a floating element. So this one down here is just a floating black shape. I gave this orange corner so that you can tell where it is. And I have also brought in a show height button so I can hide and show this shape if I want to. So what I'm going to do is I will move this to position. No, let's do this after. First, I want to make all of this that's going on in the dashboard floating. So select the outermost container and make this one floating, because we need to remove that because we want to have this one underneath. So let's move the black shape to position 0 and 0 and give this the exact dimensions of the dashboard, which is, I think, 1300 times 800 in my case. So this black shape now fills out the whole background. And we will do the same thing for the container that we just made floating. So again, move it to 0, 0 and make it the exact same size of the dashboard. And now we have this nice show height button. So simply move this to a position where you can actually see it very nicely. You can see I gave this a white sun for, let's hide this, because if I hide, well, that was stupid, sorry. And make sure to make this floating order at the very front, because otherwise it will hide behind other floating objects and you can't click it, just as happened to me right now. So if I click this now, this will remove the black behind it and we will have the light mode again. And if we click it again, it will show the black object at the back and we will have the dark mode. So one option of switching between light and dark mode. You can also do this with a colorful background. So many options of how you could utilize this. Definitely nice if you want to have a dark mode, but people still print your dashboards. So this will save them a lot of ink. And let's do the tooltip thing. Okay, real quick. You can bring in tooltips in Tableau, obviously, and you can even bring in sheets. So if I want to insert a viz in tooltip, I go to insert, select my sheet, and let's make this 6A, and we can give this a certain height that we want to, and a width, and we have that in here. So just showing the average duration in this case, because it's a ban. And we can bring in other sheets as well. So if I simply move it to the very same row, I can bring in a second sheet. So let's make this 6B, give it the same height. And this will move it, in theory, directly underneath. What am I doing wrong? I feel like I'm messing this up. So I don't want to end on a bad note. So let's simply, sorry, let's simply end this here. Again, you can read up anything on my blog. All of the tips that I just showed you will be there. So check that out. Sorry for messing up the last one. Thanks for listening. I hope you learned a couple new things, maybe if not about tooltips. And yeah, see you maybe next time.
Heidi, thank you ever so much for that. That was fantastic, and also thank you to you, Ervin. It's been fantastic. I hope everyone else out there has enjoyed it as much as I have. I nearly forgot to talk. I forgot to talk because I was so involved. So yeah, thank you ever so much for joining us here on the community meetup. We are hoping to get another meetup organised for November. So if you'd like to present to that meeting or anything like that, please get in touch. Again, messages in the chat box. I'm just going to pass you over to Kira, just for her to say a final thing at the end. Kira?
No worries. Thanks, Rob. And thanks, Ervin. Thanks, Heidi. That was fantastic. I know I learnt so much, and just by reading through some of the comments, looks like everyone else did too. So really appreciate it, guys. Well done. We've also got, as we mentioned at the beginning of the call, we've actually got a giveaway to one lucky winner as well. So Rob, would you like to announce who the lucky winner is today?
Yes, thank you, Kira. We have done a random generator here, and the lucky winner that has been picked out is a Darren Ambrose. So Darren Ambrose, if you're out there, if you'd like to message us on the chat or email us, we can get your details for you, and you are the lucky winner of some Tableau merch. So congratulations.
Excellent. Well done, Darren. So thanks so much, everyone. Again, really appreciate it. This recording will be obviously available to everyone. It will be sent through as an email following this. And yeah, any questions while we've got a couple of minutes as well? Is there any questions that anyone's got for either Heidi or Ervin just before we finish up? And feel free to take yourself off mute or use the chat. Wonderful.
Okay.
No worries. Looks like we're all good. So as Rob mentioned, how you can help grow the community as well. So get in touch with us if you'd like to present. Always your colleagues, invite them along. Everyone's more than welcome. We continue to do these virtually, although it's the Adelaide meetup. We've got people from all over the place, even Germany, where Heidi is. So yeah, really appreciate everyone for coming. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.